I know this is something I've been waiting for the past 7 days. Since our conversation with Sabrina Fulton, like I was so full from the dialogue. It was so powerful, so impactful, and people are still messaging me about that conversation from 7 days ago. And now we are here 7 days later with another conversation with DB. And we have a very, very special guest. Her name is Manoushka Saintil, and Dwayne Bryant will be the one to give her a more robust introduction. But I'm excited for this show. This is a conversation that I know a lot of people have been waiting for, and this is our time to take this opportunity to have conversations that matter. And so I would love to bring to the virtual stage Mr. Dwayne Bryant, and I encourage you before you come on the stage. This show is being broadcasted on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and major platforms such as that, and YouTube as well. And so we encourage you all to ask questions. Put questions in the YouTube comment box, put questions on Facebook, and I will go in and grab those questions, and I will ask DB directly. I will ask Manoushka directly. So thank you all so much for jumping on Conversations with DB. Dwayne Bryant, you got the floor.
Hey man, thank you, Jefferson, for such a wonderful introduction. But I have to ask you really quickly, why were you so interested and why were you so anticipating this conversation?
Listen, because Manoushka is a family therapist, and y'all are talking about trauma. So when people think of trauma, they think that you can only get trauma from a car accident or from a near death experience, but trauma can come in many ways. And I didn't go to school to learn this. She did. So I'm here to learn and take this information and bring it to my community.
Man, I'm loving it. For everyone out there in the world who is watching right now, call your family, call your friends, text them, YouTube them, whatever you need to do, because tonight's conversation is going to be fantastic. We have the lady in red, Manoushka Saintil. She's a United States veteran. She's already went out, fought for this country. She's a mother of 3. She's the 2018 Legacy Magazine Educator of the Year. She's also the owner and the founder of A New Way LLC. We're going to find out what does that mean. She holds a master's degree in marriage and family therapy from St. Thomas University. So she's educated, she's a soldier, she's a bad woman, I'm trying to tell you. She's also a dedicated marriage and family therapist, skilled in multiple phases of treatment and assessments. Manoushka Saintil has dedicated her profession and her professional and personal life to serving students and families. Her clinical philosophy seeks to engage all systems and working collaboratively to create and maintain an environment conducive to the needs, preferences, and differences of all individuals represented. Now, I don't know what the hell that means, but I guarantee you, Manoushka Saintil, welcome, and tell us, what does all of that stuff mean?
Dwayne, thank you so much. I am so honored to be here. Anytime I have an opportunity to speak to our family, because everybody is an extension of me, they are part of my family, I'm honored to be here. It basically means just what it says, is that everyone is responsible for the health of our families, and every system plays a major role in how we do that. And I consider myself a connector. You know, I am the liaison. I am the go-between. I'm the person that speaks the language. I'm the person that gives you the language that you need to use. I'm the person that just guides you so that you can reach a better understanding of what it is to live in this life, in this existence, with these current times, you know. So I call myself, I'm a connector. That's an easier way to put it. All that sums up to just be a connector.
Okay, you said something interesting. You said every system should be designed to help families. What do you mean by that?
So when we think about our major systems, right? So think about education. You know, we have our government systems, we have our police systems, we have Department of Children and Families, we have our court systems, we have the public defender's office, we have the state attorney's office, we have all of these systems are here for what? What are their purposes? To serve people, to serve their community.
Oh man, we're gonna get you a Wi-Fi booster, Manoushka.
So if we are not making, what happened? Am I delayed?
Yeah,
Now,
you said
now I see
all
you
the
glitching too.
sin.
What's happening?
It's okay. Go now. Finish up what you were saying.
Okay. Oh, it keeps saying that my connection is low. Can you guys see me now?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and now I lost my train of thought.
You're saying the systems, you're saying all of those systems, housing, education, criminal justice is designed to help families, communities.
Right. And it's important that they become culturally relevant too. Because we also, in education, we talk about culturally relevant teaching, right? But how are these systems culturally relevant to the people that they're serving? Because I like the term culturally relevant clinicians, because there aren't a lot of therapists that look like me to serve our communities. So when you look at these multiple systems, how are they reflective of the communities that they serve?
So let me ask you this. So this conversation is creating way more questions than what I even wrote down. Why aren't there more therapists, clinicians who look like you? Why not?
Well, it goes back to the fact a lot of the things that have been created was never created with us in mind. You know, that's the harsh reality of it. Because in order to become a therapist, you literally have to work for free. It's just like when you do your intern as a medical intern, and you do that whole year of internship. When you're doing your clinicals, you have to work for free. How many families, Black families, can afford to raise their family and take a hiatus without pay? You know, so those are systemic issues. You know, those are things that we have to address on a higher level of how we make this more accessible, how we make education more accessible. And you know, it's a legislative action.
Right. Well, I want to go back to that point because you said earlier that these systems are designed to help families. The reality of the systems in the housing, economics, criminal justice, banking, and almost every other system was designed to keep the Black man and woman down. So then when we say these systems are here to help families, how is that possible? Because I know I would get knocked across the head by some of our viewers if I don't address some of these systems were based on racism, including the original Constitution of the United States of America. So then how do we expect for these systems to work in our behalf when they were not designed for us to work in our behalf?
So part of my job as the connector is to not get lost in the language of what was, right? Because if we focus on that, we will never get to a place where we are making progress. So my goal as the connector is to focus on the things that we have done correctly, that we have been successful at, and do more of that. So as I engage these multiple systems within my work, is to ensure that I am looking at best practices that work for our families, and that once they work, we use more of those best practices to bring in more families because we know it works systemically. We're not just throwing, a dart at and hoping something catches. No, we have to make sure that we are taking our families into consideration, looking at their socioeconomic status, looking at their needs, you know, and really evaluating what we need to do as a system to make sure that we can meet their immediate needs.
So let me ask you this. Are you saying, and some people are not going to like this, but we're going to talk about the real issues. Are you saying then that Black people need to move beyond the past of what has happened to us, the systems that were designed against us? Are you saying then that we need to move beyond that?
So it's not about, so I like to use this term with my families. We visit the past, live in the present, you know.
Say that again for me.
We visit the past, but we live in the present. Okay. Because what happens is that it's what we call a negative feedback loop, right? You keep playing that over and over and over and over again. You get drawn into it. It sucks you in. You can't find a way out. You get this thing we call brain fog, and you're not doing anything to move forward. And you're not even acknowledging your present state of existence. Because you're constantly replaying the past. So we visit the past, being knowledgeable of it, making sure we don't repeat it, we can reference it, but don't live there, because that's going to take you back It's not going to help you move forward, and it's not going to benefit you in the long run.
So I'm gonna switch that up because I know we're talking about Black people, but now I'm gonna switch it up to the white supremacists. So they love to carry the Confederate flag. It's about heritage and it's about pride in our people. So they living in the past, a whole bunch of them. So are you saying then that they need to kind of visit the past and live in the present for it sounds like this works for everybody, because a lot of times people
for everybody,
get over slavery, forget slavery, but how about you get over the Civil War that y'all lost?
Right. It works for everybody. It's kind of like, within my field, we use methodologies and we use research, and we don't just say, oh, you should do this because it works. There are studies that happen, and there's control groups, and we kind of measure how people react to certain things. So everything is research and science-based. So yes, we know that when somebody constantly thinks about the past, live in the past, that brings on depression. That's a clinical diagnosis. So yes, it's for everyone. Even in this current climate of what we're experiencing, it's important for us to, yes, think about everything that our ancestors have done, everything that we've worked hard towards, but we need to really work on moving forward. Because when my clients come in the door and they sit there with me, I can have them rehash all of their past from A to Z. But how is that going to help them? I have to devise a treatment plan. I have to put a plan in place to make sure that I'm going to get them from point A to point Z. But I can't do that if I'm just visiting the past, listening to the problem saturated stories and keeping that going. So it's the same thing with systemic racism. It's the same thing with police brutality. We have to have a plan. Protesting is just a form of what we do to release some of that aggression, and it helps. But what is the plan?
That's one of my questions right here. It says, is protesting necessary to relieve some of that pain and trauma? But you've already answered that. So let me ask you this. Describe for me how we as a people are impacted by trauma in our daily lives, and is trauma worse for African Americans than any other group in America?
That's a good question, Dwayne. So think about generational trauma, right? And so we live.
Can you define, just in case if someone doesn't know, because in the church we call it cycles and generational curses, but you use them big old words that I have to get dictionaries when I talk to you. So you're talking about generational trauma. Can you define that?
So my perfect example that I typically use with generational trauma is, spanking, right? That's a very perfect example of generational trauma. My grandmother spanked, my mother spanked, now I'm going to spank, right? So that is not, there's research that shows spanking does not do what we say it's supposed to do. It does not change the behavior. It doesn't modify the behavior. It actually allows our children to think, well, if my parents are going to do this to me, that when I walk out that door, is it okay for someone else to treat me that way? If I'm experiencing this in the home. So when you have that type of trauma that has been passed on, you don't see it as a problem. You don't see it as something that impacts the way that you show up in your life. When you have those triggers and you get angry because somebody approaches you a certain way and you snap, those are triggers based on the trauma, because maybe your parents treated you a certain way and you got spankings all of the time, and you don't even know how to express yourself or talk about your feelings because it was met with a spanking. So all of that impacts the way you show up every single day. So I always use spanking as an example, because in the Black community, we spank.
Wait a minute. I'm just going to tell you what thus said the Lord. As you were talking, I was on my phone and I went to Proverbs 23:14. It says, thou shalt beat him with the rod and shalt deliver his soul from hell. So it also says, spoil the child. You know what it says. So Black people believe you got to beat that ASSS swiggle in order to get that child to act right. Now, so are you telling us that the word of God is not right?
I'm just saying that a lot of what I do is psychoeducational, right? So we have to educate our families and talk about where did spanking come from, right? Because it is very clear that African Americans adopted the practice of beating children from white slave masters. Europeans brutalized their children for thousands of years, because when historians and anthropologists look at how we lived prior to colonization, there is no evidence that we use that type of discipline for our children. So we have to think about, where did we adopt some of this behavior?
Wait, I've been to Ghana, Kenya, Morocco, Nigeria, and maybe a couple other places. I don't remember seeing anybody spanking their kid. So you telling me that we did not bring that with us from Africa? That was adapted here.
Right. So a lot of the study shows that a lot of the children, a lot of the people that transitioned from the Atlantic slave trade were younger children. So if I'm a younger child coming into a new country, I didn't bring a lot of my rituals with me because I was still learning. So it was easier for me to adapt a new way because it was what was shown to me. So it is proven, and research backs it up. That is not how we discipline. We saw our children as gift from God. We kind of treated children as I tell parents, it's an honor and a privilege to be a parent, not a burden and a sacrifice. So we have to start to.
From God, you don't beat the heck out of it. If you see it as a burden, then you might, wow. Time out. So this is telling me too then that white supremacy is so powerful that it is not just white people who are white supremacists, Black people are also white supremacists.
It's not even that it's white supremacy. It's just, so when we talk about systemic racism and we talk about how racism shows up in our lives, we don't know how embedded some of those practices have been within our own families, that now we perpetuate the exact same thing that we are trying to escape. Because you have to understand that this is why I talk to my families. Their childhood is the most, you have to protect those 18 years, because you are essentially developing the human, a person, because they come to us as empty vessels. So you have a lot of work to do within those 18 years. So you have to protect that child's development, because who they become is 100%. I wouldn't say 100%. I would give about 85% of what they have experienced as a result of their parents. And a lot of people like, oh, I don't want to blame my parents. I don't want to keep talking about my parents, but you have to go to the origin. When I tell you, we have to start from the beginning. When we're talking about trauma, we have to change the language, and we have to say, stop asking what's wrong with you and start asking what happened to you.
That just feels good. Because when you say what's wrong with you, it just makes me feel like, okay, I need to tell you something is wrong with me. And that just sounds negative. But then if I tell you what happens to me, then I can tell you the things that have happened over time to really shape me. So let me fast forward, and we're going to go back for a minute. So let's say adults who are looking for a mate. So let's say you single, I'm single, whoever. And so we're grown-ups trying to meet this other person. It's almost like what I'm hearing is we're not just grown-ups meeting each other. We're two broken vessels who had all kinds of trauma for the last however many years. So I bring in my trauma, you bring in your trauma, and we try to figure out how to coexist with trauma.
Right. So when I see couples, right? So yeah, couples is a very unique system. And yes, and so, a lot of time in relationships, we are always looking for somebody else to make us happy. And we're looking for somebody else. When I cringe, when I hear things like, oh, you complete me. And it's not because I'm not a hopeless romantic. It's because you have to show up whole. It takes two whole people to make a relationship. So if you're looking for someone to complete you,
Oh man, you froze up for a minute. So I
then
know you were saying.
what happens when they? Am I slowing down?
You froze up. You said if you're looking for two people to come, so go right there.
Let me see if I can connect my Wi-Fi also. And Wi-Fi has never been a problem, but it's because we're having this conversation.
I'm gonna tell you what my grandma would say. She would say the news and the information is so powerful, you try to liberate the people that the devil tried to stop you through the lines. Oh. Uh-oh. You got Jefferson.
Oh, he's come off. He's come into the conversation.
No, I'm saying as she connects to her Wi-Fi, I just wanted to share a few comments that people were saying on Facebook as she connects to Wi-Fi. So someone said internalized racism is the word. I believe that was in response to Black people sort of adopting the ideals of white supremacy. Yes. So they said
it's called what? Internalized racism?
Internalized racism.
Okay, man. I love my Facebook family and friends. I believe they're some of the smartest people on the planet. Anything I need to know, I'll go and ask them a question because it's so diverse. We got white folk, Black folk, rich people, poor people, ignorant people, dumb people, stank people, good smelling people. We got, I'm telling you, I got white supremacists on my page, and we talk too. So what else? What else you got?
I hope I'm one of the good smelling people on your page. So
I don't know, man. You too far from me, so I can't tell you. I hope so. Hey, blow your breath in the camera.
I can't take you guys anywhere.
And then they said spanking is not it. So that's breaking news. When she said we shouldn't spank our kids, that's breaking news for me. And that's breaking news for some of your Facebook.
So was that your first time hearing that, Jefferson?
That was my first time hearing it in that context. I heard friends say it, but not with any research to back it up. So
because she just didn't give you the why. Shoot, we got Manoushka Saintil, baby. She ain't playing. She got the fact and the data. What else you got, Jefferson?
So someone said, in response to the Bible verse you mentioned, someone said the Bible is not a literal text. Think beyond the words, find the origin. They coming for you.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Hey, I'm just telling you.
You're gonna have to hold him back.
Listen, I'm just telling you the trauma in which I grew up in.
So that's what we got for now, and it looks like Manoushka is back and ready, and I'll jump on.
Yeah, it seems like my Wi-Fi.
Yeah, you all right with me, Jefferson Noel? Okay, so let me ask you this then: how does trauma show up in how we live our lives? How does trauma show up?
So, Dwayne, trauma is that headache that you can't get rid of. Trauma is that ulcer that forms. Ooh. So trauma is internal, but the external impacts of that show up in when somebody asks you to do something and you automatically become angry and you don't even know why you're angry because you have some unaddressed trauma in your life. We live through our experiences, right? So as you are going through your life and those experiences go unaddressed, unchecked, unexplored, you just bottle that up inside. It becomes internalized. So when we talk about triggers, there are certain things that will trigger you to react based on the trauma you have experienced. So when you have that child that is angry all of the time, and because they've been spanked at home all the time and they don't know how to respond to anger, that's traumatic for them. So they're angry. That child is constantly angry. Why are you angry? Because I've never dealt with the trauma of the abuse that I experienced. So it's the same thing with domestic violence. It's the same thing with, all of our experiences, if they go unexplored, and I can't say unchecked, it's unexplored. It's about having the conversation, because we talked about, so one of what we talked about in our description is really addressing what's happening in the news feed, right?
Right.
So trauma is staying up, watching over and over and over again the death of a man, a Black man that looks like my father, that looks like my brother, that looks like my neighbor. watching him die on screen,
That's
watching that over and over again is traumatic. That
yeah,
is not okay.
I'm sorry, I had someone call me this week and say, hey, are you watching the funeral in Houston? I said, I saw the one in Minnesota. I don't need to watch 3 funerals of one person. I'm okay with that. So you're saying just sitting there consistently watching the death repeatedly is also traumatizing. So I could be traumatizing myself and
right.
not
Re-traumatization, right. So I tell my family, it's okay for you to check in on the media. You can, designate a time that you just want to make sure you know what's going on in the world. You can read, but don't introduce your family to that. Don't leave the television on all day playing the news cycle of what's going on, because it does something to your psyche. And so you have to guard that.
So let me ask you this question. It sounds like, okay, when people say meditation, they normally use it in a positive way. Like I sit, I may chant, I may whatever it is I do, but I'm meditating. I'm thinking over and over of this positive enlightenment or whatever I may be trying to bring myself to, that level of evolution. But it sounds like what you're saying is you can also meditate on negative, destructive, right, and maybe even evil things that can also internalize, cause trauma within yourself.
Right. Because what you choose to focus on, and I believe in the power of attraction. You will gravitate towards that, and so you put your energy into that, then it will come back to you. So no, constantly looking at that, reading it. There's something called re-traumatize, when you re-traumatize yourself over and over again. So set a certain time with your family, to have a discussion of what's going on in the media. Make sure it's within the parameters. You set some ground rules, let everybody feel free to express themselves. Let it be controlled. Sit down with your children. Do not wait for them to look at it on IG, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and they are finding out this information without your guidance. Have a conversation about what's happening in America today. And kind of let them introduce the topics, but help guide the conversation. Give them a safe place to explore the narrative.
What grade is too young to have those conversations?
Too grown? What do you mean too grown? I don't think it's ever
too young.
Too young? Oh, okay. I think it's important to realize that, adolescents, the moment that you realize that they can understand, I think the difference, there's different, I would say 3. Every child is different, your child, right? So my 6-year-old may be different from your 8-year-old, and my 3-year-old may be different from your 4-year-old. So your child, and what their level of understanding is. When your children start asking you questions, and that's probably a very good indicator that it's time to have a conversation. Because in our generation, not your generation. Oh, it's shame.
Hey, that's why I'm gonna take my 50-year-old self and celebrate. Hope that you get there, God dog it. Hope you get there, doggone it. Listen, I have a question for you. Today, we have online learning now for my company. E-learning with DB is what we call it, where we're teaching students time management, goal setting, conflict resolution, bullying, et cetera. And we were training 21 schools on how to implement this curriculum for their summer program. And one lady said, man, your conflict resolution, the content is really good, but I think it may be too old for 4th graders and 5th graders. And I said, I don't think so at all, because they see conflict all around them. They watch it on television. Even the 3rd graders, they are seeing it. They see conflict in their homes because domestic abuse is skyrocketing. I said, so if they see it and they feel it, but no one is talking about it, how is it
talking about it
old for them? So what do you say about not having, quote unquote, literally quote, don't have conversations on conflict resolution because the students are not old enough? 3rd graders, 2nd graders are not old enough to begin the conversation on conflict resolution.
So, and I would ask that person, so what happened to you, which made you believe that that child wouldn't be old enough to receive that? Because a lot of times we parent the way we were parent, we teach the way we've been taught, and so exploring her reference point of what is too old, because in all actuality, those children, this generation, the information age, they know everything. We are doing more of a collaborative, we're more collaborating in this space right now, as in parenting and teaching. You don't have to go to school to learn to be a top chef. You can kind of figure it out on your own. Yeah. So everything is a collaborative space. We make the assumption that children don't already know. We are living in the information age that goes back to ensuring that you are guiding the conversation. Do not make assumptions. Our parents treated us that way. So I have this, this training that is talk about generation wars. We are coexisting with 5 generations. So everybody has a viewpoint of how things should be done, but they're not checking in with the children that will inherit this land of what they need and what works for them. Nobody's asking them enough questions. So I bet you if she asks that child, ask the children that she's questioning is too young or too old, and let them give her some clarity, and they'll probably school her because they already know it.
Yeah, you would have been very proud of my answer, because I told her, I said, and I don't have the background that you have, but I said, our children are way more advanced than what we think. They're looking for adults to have intelligent conversations with them and not belittle what they think they know. I said, why don't you ask them what they think about conflict and then listen, not ask them and then tell them. So you have to ask and then be prepared to listen as well. Have another question for you. What happens when parents don't have the skill set and the tools to do what you're saying? Listening is a skill set. Listening is a tool. Most parents say, do what I say. It's because, why? Because I said so. So what do you say when parents do not have those tools?
So just like the information age exists for the students, it exists for the parents. There are resources out there. You do not have to do it alone. You don't have to wing it anymore. We are not going to, you should not wing parenting. If you're not sure.
Hey, that should be a statement. You can put that on a t-shirt. Do not wing parenting. Absolutely.
You can't wing parenting. There are books, there are resources. If your true desire is to really engage with your child, kind of figure out what's going on with them, you're going to do the work. You wouldn't go into a job and half blanket, right? So don't do it as a parent. Go in full throttle, and the things that you aren't sure about, reach out to your small community, your big community. Let there be circles of pockets of people that you can reach back and ask questions, like have a conversation. Most of the time when I treat children, I spend time working with the parents, because you are not going to undo all of the work that I've just done working with your child. So I reserve a certain time to work with the parents, because if you track it, it has something to do with the parents. My children absolutely. That come 100%. To me are acting out or misbehaving based on the behavior or a circumstance happening in the home.
I agree with that. Question for you. We did programming in Chicago. Like my company, we've seen over 30 some odd thousand students, direct services. And in some schools, we would see them 2 days a week, like a Tuesday, a Thursday, a Monday, a Wednesday. But when I first started back in 1998, since you want to tell my age, back in the 1900s, I would literally go to a school on a rotation, maybe once every 3 or 4 months. And I told the superintendent, Dr. Blunding Davis, a powerful woman, I said, I don't think this is going to work, because I can come to the school on Monday, light these students up, but they go home and get reprogrammed. So when I come back to them a month, 2, 3 months later, it's like they may have forgotten everything I said. So my question is, let's assume that the home structure does not have the resources or even the competence within the family. Can school serve as a surrogate to get those services for the students? And if so, how often should schools be looking at interacting with the young person to at least help, pivot them or steer them in the right direction?
Right. And it's the same thing with being a therapist. So you make sure you give them tools and strategies. And you may think that they forget. They don't forget. It's just giving them the ability to know when to use those tools and strategies. So schools, absolutely. I always say if it's something that needs to be delivered, it needs to go through the schools because they house our children for about 8 hours a day.
Way more than parents.
Right, more than the parents. So absolutely, schools have a responsibility to work on some of those issues within the building, and then giving students tools and strategies to take home with them, because they're not going to be 100% able to do it all of the time. But when we talk to students and they have anger management problems, we give them tools and strategies.
Yeah, all the time.
Right, use your music, right. It's the same thing. As adults, we aren't able to kind of like pull it out of our toolboxes all the time. But it's important to give children tools and strategies and adults tools and strategies, because you will be able to use them at certain times.
Quick question. What is the difference between stress and trauma?
So stress is a medical term. Well, they're both medical terms, but stress, you see it outwardly, right? Trauma is more internalized. Because stress shows up in your life based on how you respond to different things. And I can't think of the exact definition right now, but they just show up differently, because stress can, your hair can fall out from stress. You can, not sleep because of stress. Like, you start to see those things externally, but trauma is something that you internalize and you don't even know that it's happening to you.
So is trauma more intense than stress? Or is stress less bad than trauma?
I think we can't put them on like a scale and measure them, because everybody's stress and trauma is different.
Yeah.
So it's based on what they've experienced, because something as small as, your parents yelling at you could traumatize you, right? And it could stress you out, so it's different. It's different for every single person, which is why it's important for you to have an individualized treatment plan. Like, you have to work with that person individually. One size does not fit all. If that was the case, I would be out of business, because, there would be no need to work with people individually and really dig deep and to figure out what's ailing them. So yeah. I wouldn't be able to kind of summarize that.
Personally, I believe in America and around the world. Right now, I believe stress is at an all-time high. I believe trauma is at an all-time high. I mean, even myself personally, after Amy Cooper in New York, when the brother Christian Cooper told her to leash her dog and she got to acting a fool and started calling the cops and crying. Literally 2 days after that, I was walking downstairs in my residence in Florida, and there was a dog just out by itself. And I was like, little damn dog. And so it started coming towards me like, and I was thinking, where's your owner? That's what I said to the dog. I said, where's your owner? Because literally I'm going back all the way to New York, people who had nothing to do with me. And then I heard someone say, it's a dog. No, I said, where's your leash? And I heard someone say, it's a dog. It don't need a leash. And I was like, I mean, normally I wouldn't probably, but literally I felt an anger on the inside. Like, and then so I looked at where the voice was coming from. And as I was looking at the person, it was my neighbor who I like, Kyle. Good guy. We've ridden bikes together. And I was able to like quickly go, oh, Kyle. And I'm like, whoa, I was ready because my stress was high. My tension is high. And I'm sitting here thinking, this is me, someone who
you were re-traumatized, just that experience. And so imagine you would have lashed out on him because you have seen the imagery over and over again. You know what it is to be Black in America, so that has now become a trigger for you. But it's important that you recognized it and you were able to control that emotion, work it, talk yourself down. Some people can't do that. They're not able, they don't have the tools.
Yeah. And literally afterwards, I said, D, you were really triggered by that quickly. But when I was able to see him, I said, that's my friend, my neighbor, Kyle. And I was not offended by it at all. But then I really had to ask myself, what happens to the person who might not have the training or the therapist friend like you or Love McPherson or things of that nature, who can't quickly assess? Do I go over and knock him out? Do I kick the dog? And now it's all kinds of crazy. How do people get counseling? Because everybody's traumatized, everybody's under stress, and I think most people don't even realize it.
Right. It's important to have somebody to talk to, and everybody don't believe in therapy. And, in the Black community, that's a very, telling somebody to go see a therapist is like calling them crazy. And it's unfortunate because that's not what therapy is. It's about having a conversation of somebody that is not going to judge you and not going to kind of characterize you, is not going to look for a specific outcome, that's going to be objective and really listen to what is it that is ailing you and help you reach to a solution. I can't watch television shows where they show therapists and people are sitting on the couch and the therapist is giving advice. We don't give advice. What you need, you already have. My job is to guide you there.
Sometimes you just need to tell me, hell, because I can sit there for 5 sessions like, come on now, it's taking too long to get to nothing. Can you speak? Come on, therapist.
If I tell you, you won't be able to get there again by yourself when I'm not there. Don't you know the
answer already, though?
Pardon?
Don't you know the answer that the person is like, you're giving your therapy to someone and you problem is, so why take them 20 sessions? Okay, boom, devil's advocate. Is it because y'all just want to string this thing out and make some more money versus saying, look, your problem is your daddy, your mama, whatever this issue is, and just help this person along their way? Why y'all got to take that goddamn long now?
Right, because the brain is a powerful thing, right? And so
you're getting the tooted lips. You better come on with something better than that.
It is. You have to let people arrive there by themselves, because in my absence, you have to be able to figure out how to get yourself back there, because you can't carry your therapist on your back and say and need them like, oh, I need someone to talk to me about this, and I need someone to talk to me about that. So it's about a guided process. We teach people how to arrive at an answer and explore all of the things that they didn't necessarily see or they didn't necessarily take into consideration, because I can be objective. I can sit back and look at the whole picture where you have a tunnel view and you only see it this way.
That's my point. Since you can be objective, you know doggone well what the problem is. Why waste all that time and make me go 20 sessions when in 3 sessions you couldn't have said what I need to say? We busy. We ain't got that kind of time now.
No, I'm telling you. It's about, especially with Black communities. Can you imagine? And so I always talk about therapy when I can remember sitting in grad school and I'm sitting there listening and I'm like, this is not gonna work for my people, because we are different. You cannot go into any mom's house. You can't go and talk to a Black woman about her Black kids and telling her how to raise her children and telling her what she's been doing wrong. You can't do that. So there is a guided process, some of the science works, of how we have people come into self-actualization, how they actualize for themselves. So it's very important that you walk people through that. It's called, there's psychoeducational. It's a path. I always say, I'm not telling you that my way is the right way and your way is the wrong way. I am asking you to explore this new way with me. Let's go down this new path.
Oh, that's why the company, a new, look at you. I was going to ask you, where did that come from?
But wait. You see how I guided you there? Did you see how I guided you there?
Shut your mouth. You just psychoanalyze. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm feeling it. I might be committing to this therapeutic thing. So listen, we only have like 10 minutes left. Believe it or not, I told you that I was going to. I know. Listen. Hey. Listen. So real quick, I want to do some specific stuff now. Personally, I think Black men walk around frowning too much. I see brothers all the time. You say, "What's up, man?" Everybody, I be smiling more than half of the time. So clearly that must mean that Black men are under a lot of trauma, a lot of stress. What can Black men do to help themselves to either relieve that trauma, to get over some of that trauma, to visit the past, but live in the present so that we can start smiling more? Because I think that affects families. I think it affects kids. Little boys walk around frowning because they see they grown, frowning up all the doggone time. Daddy, look at me. What can we do as a men, Black men, to help our trauma so we can start smiling, just smiling?
Well, you have to go back to, where did you learn that smiling wasn't okay? Where did you learn that the frown was what you needed to present to the world? What happened? You remember the question? Not what's wrong with you,
what happened
to you? So we have to start asking that questions. And as women, as their significant others, we have to be more understanding. We have to be more amicable. We have to be a little softer in our approach. And
can you say that again? Hold on now. On behalf of all the Black men listening that's dating a woman, can you tell the woman what they need?
You about to get me in trouble. I'm not going to have no more female clients.
We need this love right now. You bringing it to us. What can women do to help their men? Can you say that one more time?
We have to ask more questions like, what happened?
What happened? Not what the hell wrong with you?
Not what's right.
Okay.
Right.
What else?
And it gives you an opportunity to open up, that you know someone is listening and they actually care. So it has, and so we talk about within my practice, within our field, we talk about reframing and the way we ask questions and the open-ended questions. And we have to really explore how we speak to each other, how we engage with each other. Remember, everything is systemic. We yell at each other. Like, all of that was given to us. Our slave masters used to yell at us. All of that stuff has been passed down from generation to generation. We have to stop re-traumatizing ourselves. We have to nip it in the bud, identify those things that just don't sit right. Because if you're telling me that your child needs that type of discipline, or you need to talk to such and such like that, why? What happened to you? What caused you to do that? What happened to you?
Ooh, that just seems so loving. I feel like I want to on Fix My Life. Baby, what happened to you?
What happened to you, baby?
Yeah, because you know what? Ultimately, I believe we all want to be loved. We all want to give love. We all want to receive love. But sometimes that trauma is so thick, it stops us. And I know for me personally, I got trust issues and all that other stuff like the average person. So then I'm going to have to ask myself.
Lay on the couch.
Yeah, but you said I can't lay on the couch because I ain't taking no 20 sessions with you to get there. I need you to tell me what it is. So I ain't laying on your couch. Listen though. What up,
Jefferson, he was like, I'm gonna come lay on the couch.
You see the couch right behind Jefferson. He already ready. What you got for us, man?
All right, so Becky has a question, but before we get
to Becky, is her name really Becky?
Her name is really
She's
Becky.
asking for a friend.
But before we get to Becky's question, Jennifer, she mentioned something about Jennifer Clark, about what happened to you.
Jennifer, that's my homegirl from Florida, I think.
Oh yeah. So Jennifer asks, what if they don't believe anything happened and aren't open to going there? Because some people, they don't believe something happened, but they may not want to even explore just in case something did. So what do you do with something like that? And then we'll get to the question.
So when you start therapy, you do a complete assessment. You ask all of the questions related to their childhood, where they were raised, their experiences with their families. So you have to listen to the story first. So most of the time, if you ask people what happened in their speech, in their conversation about what has happened to them, you'll start to hear it and you start to point it out for them. Like, I've heard you say, blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? So it's not necessarily telling them, but having them tell the story and then pull out of those stories the instances where you was like, oh, your mama did what? You know, so you can start to ask those questions like, you know, I heard what you said, and, you know, so you don't think that had a significant impact in how you do this, and this. Now don't start doing my job, but you can start asking the questions. It is very important to ask open-ended questions. A lot of time we're trained, we have asked closed-ended questions. It's all about the yes, the no's. Ask open-ended questions. Explore the narrative. Let them talk about it. And then the listening, it's going to come out. Believe me.
That is so powerful. And I think even people in relationships don't have that skills. They even say stuff like, if you love me, you would know. What else? What else you got? What did Becky say?
Okay, so Becky, she said...
Wait. So Jennifer Clark, if you're still watching, type us again. Let us know, did that answer your question? And the other thing is, are you able to try that Manoushka just gave us in your next relationship? All right, what did Becky say?
Okay, so Becky comment disappeared, but I sort of remember it. So I'll give it to you on top of my head. It sounds like she works in a school, and she's trying to figure out why students aren't approaching adults to share the trauma that they're going through, and what can adults in the school do to get students to open up. So that's the gist of her question. Okay, before Manoushka hit that, let me give you my non-clinical approach. One, teachers don't always have good relationships with students where they trust them. Two, a lot of times parents tell them, now you go to that school telling my business, when you get home that I'm gonna get whooped. So they haven't heard Manoushka yet that they're perpetuating slavery by beating their child. Three, the kids may not want to share because they may feel like something is wrong with me, because when the teachers ask them, oh, Manoushka, listen how I'm doing this thing. When the teachers ask them, they say, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? As opposed to the other stuff. So that's my non-clinical. Go ahead, Doc. Go ahead, take it on home with me.
So it's very important to realize that nothing happens without a relationship, right? So first, let's talk about the relationship that you have with your student. And so if you don't have a relationship, you haven't established this connection, because even within therapy, you have to establish a relationship with your client, because I consult first before I agree to take your case, because I might not be the best person for you. And I need to know that I need you to know that I am in this in your best interest. So if that child does not have a sense that there is a relationship between you and that student, have you engaged with them outside of the classroom? Do you know if they're part of a basketball team? Have you watched them play? Like, how do you show up outside of your disciplinary role, outside of your authoritative role? So you have to humanize yourself to those students, because they just see you as a teacher. You ever see a child go to school and they see their teacher at a skating ring or the grocery store, and they're like, what you doing here?
Like you human? Yeah.
Right. So think about the relationship first. What type of relationship you have with your students? That will guide you into your next step and your next phase. Because if you don't have a relationship, nothing can happen.
I knew her answer was going to be better than mine.
Yeah, that was fire. Sorry, Dwayne. Manoushka 1, Dwayne 0.
Hey, right, so that's why we need these trained professionals around here.
That's right. So Jennifer, actually, she is still watching, and she responded. So Jennifer Clark said, yes, I have. They believe stating anything bad about their mom is not tolerated and refuse to go there.
And you know what? I know that is very prevalent with Black men, because in many of our homes, the father is the one who abandoned us and the mother is the one who sacrificed for us. But I'm going to say this, and I'm understanding this with my own mother, that our parents also are born in their own drama, their own trauma, and they raised us the best that they could. So for instance, my father walked out on us, but my mom was overly disciplined. Get up. You know, men don't sleep past 6 o'clock. Mama, it's Saturday. Get up. Go cut the yacht. Mama, we cut it yesterday. Go cut your grandma yacht. Mama, we cut hers yesterday too. And so it was always just something extra, because she was trying to overly undo what was done. So the reality is I'm seeing many flaws in my mother. and things that she grew up with, areas that she's held and she's been taught. So I think the reality is we have to understand that all humans, including our mothers, one, they loved us the best they could, and they love us the best way they can. They're trying to provide for us the best way that they can, but all humans, including ourselves, are flawed. So in the case of that gentleman for Jennifer, and she's not going to be the one to tell him. And so,
and sometimes, you might be too close to it. And it's just important for you to realize, Jennifer, that sometimes it's not your responsibility too, because, it goes back to the roles that we must play, because you have to kind of give him space to explore that. Maybe put a book in front of him, watch a TV show, some way to introduce the conversation and just say, I'm not saying that your mother did anything wrong. I'm saying you had a bad childhood, but let's talk about what may have happened and what may have impacted the way that you are showing up in life right now. Put the question mark that maybe.
So I got a question. I'm just thinking, like, is it tough for you to date somebody because you got all this high level skill stuff and the average brother, we don't have that. So when you come to us talking about, well, tell me how you.
Look, I'm telling you right now, this is what happens to therapists, right? I'm like the fat doctor, right? It's always good when you're giving advice, but it's hard to apply it for yourself.
Hey, so you saying that your relationship, you like, what's wrong with you?
I've gotten a lot better, because you're right. I have a very high level of expectation, and communication is very important. And I'm like, but I had to really step back, just like I wasn't a great parent when I started this. So I've gotten better. And educate myself. And the therapist sometimes need a therapist too. I need somebody to check in, talk to, make sure that I'm not overreacting. Sometimes that's with my friends. Sometimes that's with my mother. So talk therapy at the end of the day is the oldest form of therapy, and that exists outside of my profession or anybody else's profession. Having someone to talk to, check in with, at minimum, gives you a place to kind of like unload. I always ask my client, where do you unload? Who do you share with? And if you keep all of that inside, that makes for a very angry individual walking around bottled up with the world on their shoulders.
Okay. So listen, we only have a few minutes left, so now we're gonna have to go to rapid fire. So do you have one because I got 3 more, Jefferson, 4 more. Do you have anything else?
I don't have any more questions, but a couple comments. Someone said, you looking real fine, Dwayne. So I don't know who that is. Hey, second for you.
Hey, so hold on. I don't want to respond. I want to ask, why do you say I'm looking really fine? What happened to you to think that? What else you got?
Other than that, we got nice comments. Someone said my brother. Someone said I agree with you 100%. And someone said awesome conversation, you all. Thank you.
All right, that is awesome. Thank you, my brother, Jefferson Noel. And also, what's the name of your book, Jefferson?
My book is called Go, How to Cross the Starting Line. I wrote it because most people, they never reach the finish line because they never start.
Ooh.
Right, awesome.
We're going to have you on the show, brother, because that right there will preach.
I'm coming soon.
Okay, I like it. Okay, so a lot of people were disproportionately.
Wait, you're breaking up. 19. I don't know if that's me or you. Start over.
Shoot. Okay, let me start over. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay. A lot of black people were disproportionately dying over the COVID-19 virus. And I was watching my friend Bernice King. She was on the show with some doctors, and they were saying basically a lot of times black people's immune systems were compromised. And she was like, why? And they were saying things, vitamin D levels, but stress also lowers your immune system. So if black people are living in a traumatized state and a stressed out state, when viruses like this happen, just in living while black in America, it makes us more susceptible to death. How do we, emergency level, get this quality of life under control, because poverty, some of us still gonna be in there. Some of us still gonna live where we live. So you can't change the fixed things in our lives, but how do we change the variable things so that at least we can live a better quality life so we're not dying with the next pandemic, because it is coming.
Right. So I am the person that believes science and creationism exist, right? So science has some things figured out. Scientifically, there are some things that we can follow. There are some things that we can do to mitigate the loss. And there are some things that we can do to help our communities and help ourselves. So we must focus on what we can do to eliminate stress, to reduce stress. So exercise is 100% the easiest, the cheapest way to start to eliminate and lower stress within our lives. Focusing on what we can do to bring our families together, eating dinner together, spending time with each other. We get so caught up in doing life that we forget to live life. We are just passing each other by, and we don't even spend any time with each other anymore. So COVID, as worse as the pandemic was, it gave us the opportunity to sit still, and stop passing each other by. Some of the things that we didn't know was happening with our children as it relates to learning, we have learned those things. Some of the things that we didn't know was happening with our spouses, we have learned those things. So we have to learn to slow down and take care of ourselves, because I always tell my client, I can't mitigate and help all of the people around you. You're who in front. You are who I am here to take care of. So I need you to put yourself at the top of the list, because if you don't work, nothing else within your system works, because they're all depending on you. So we have to learn to take care of ourselves. As Black people, we have to learn to put ourselves at the top of the list. It's not being selfish. Address your health concerns by first starting with exercise, making sure that you have a healthy diet. Like I said, I treat the whole person. We don't just look at one thing. We have to look at the system. Just like all of these systems in place that keep racism and keep everything going, the sum of all parts equal a whole. So everything about you creates who you are. So we have to address all of these different things before we get to a place where we can help you live a more fruitful and thriving life.
What about that single parent mom who has yourself, you got 3 children, I believe, single parent mom, you have a full-time job, you have your own business. I mean, come on, how do you that balance? And if anyone can say it, you can tell us, what does that look like? Do you have a schedule? I know one thing we did with Shani, Shaquille's ex-wife, you were talking about the whiteboard and stuff like that. So
I have a schedule.
How does that look?
But it goes back to first me identifying, Dwayne, that I had to put me first. As all of those things that you described that I do, Manoushka Saintil is at the top of that list. And it's not because I'm like everybody else is at the bottom, but I know if I'm not good, everybody else is going to suffer. So yes, at 6 a.m., I'm up to exercise. Do I always make it for 6 a.m. workout? No, but I give myself a pass and I hit the reset button and I try again the next day, making sure I eat a healthy diet, because your health, your ability to function is connected 100% to what you put in your mouth. I'm not knocking anybody that's willing to put 99-cent burgers in their mouth, but I have to be reevaluating what I put into my system. And if they are willing to give it away for free, then yeah, that's a problem. So I have to think about what I eat, what I put into my body, because that ultimately determines my health, my longevity, my ability to be here beyond the years. So, like I said, we do a complete assessment. I look at the whole person and we start to tackle things one at a time. So exercise, eating right, and, making time for yourself. Whether it's meditation.
What about your words? How you speak? I mean,
right, and positive thinking. Affirmations is very important for you.
And they just even write sticky notes and put them on their mirror.
Right. It's definitely, but you have to plan it, right? I always tell people it has to be a plan. You can't just arbitrarily do it. Give yourself a plan. Put it in place. What they say, I'm gonna use one of your terms, write the vision, make it plain.
Make it plain,
You
guys.
know? So give yourself a plan, because that's what everybody does. For education, you have a education plan. When you go to the doctor, you have a medical treatment plan. Everything gives you something that's spelled out. Do that for yourself. You deserve that level of commitment. You deserve that level of concentration, and pour that energy into yourself, and you'll be surprised at the results. Just so simple things.
Yeah. So if you can give it to everyone else, certainly you have the capacity to give it, but do you feel worthy enough to give it to yourself?
That's a whole nother conversation.
All right, next question. Does police violence affect our trauma levels?
Of course, but you even said that when someone talked to you about the dog and, leashing the dog, and how you responded. If we are constantly watching images of police brutality and how people and what happens to me when I am in police custody, the level of anxiety and stress and fear that happens within those seconds in that moment. I mean, I think we recently saw the recent post of the young man that died that was in police custody. I believe it was in Texas. And, he had health issues, but on top of his health issues, what he was experiencing in that moment, because I believe when a Black man is pulled over, I think the first thought is like, I might die. I might not make it through this. So the fear of dying, that happens to a African-American male every single time that they encounter the police. You cannot imagine that level of stress and anxiety and fear.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. I remember, every time I'm driving and I see a police car, like I always put my back erect. I put on my seatbelt. I go 10 and 2 because you never know. You don't want to look suspicious in any way, even if you're not doing anything.
Right.
Even if you're maybe grocery shopping. And I think just having that constant trauma on my mind and on the minds of my friends and family is horrible. It's horrible.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And you constantly relive it every single time.
Every single time. Hey, what's up, Dwayne?
Hey, I'm so glad I have a professional team here. I don't know what happened. I just know I was talking and all of a sudden, bloop, I was gone. You have frozen up on my screen. So what was the last statement? Did I miss?
I was talking about, what was the last thing you heard?
Child, hey, I'm gonna claim 50 years old. It was all good. You were talking about media, and once you see so many negative impressions that it causes stress, it causes trauma.
I said, can you imagine what a Black man experiences every single time that he sees a police officer, and that the possibility of being pulled over or the fear of dying, that level of stress and anxiety that happens within those moments? You can't describe it. And there's really nothing that you can prescribe for it. You know what I mean? Besides us intentionally changing the practice of, how police engage Black and brown communities within our judicial system and within reforms.
Yeah, I have a meeting with a major police figure tomorrow, and then I'll be on Fox News tomorrow talking about police community. Because here's what's interesting. I'm an educated Black man, went to college on a full academic scholarship, Florida International University. Pause up, Jefferson, Noel. Pause up, baby. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And never have been pulled over 17 plus times by law enforcement. Never been arrested. No criminal history. None of that. However, even when I see flashing lights, I wrote the book, The Stop Improving Police and Community Relations. And I remember I was in Virginia speaking at an all-white male college, predominantly white male college. And I got pulled over, literally I was looking at cotton fields when I'm driving to the engagement. I'm like feeling some kind of way. And I think, honestly, the law of attraction, I think I attracted that police into my life because I'm like, okay, I need to hurry up and get to this hotel before the sun goes down. Yes. And here I am like, dude, are you kidding me? And so I know if I feel this stress, then probably 99.5% of all Black men in America feel the same way. That is unnecessary. It is unjustified. It is unjust. And in a society that's supposed to be the land of the free, the home of the brave, that means that police departments all over the country need to do a better job, because the reality is you can become a police officer with a high school diploma, a little bit of college, or not much at all. So if I roll through your neighborhood in my Mercedes CLS, you might be implicitly biased because where you're from, your thoughts and the media that you're watching makes you think that I'm the drug dealer and the gangbanger. So all of a sudden you get your dumb, ignorant, uneducated self and you want to approach me, and I'm going to go, and I may say something or I may not. I may just do it the perfect way. But even if I do it perfectly, I can still lose my life.
Right.
To still violate my constitutional rights because you have the law. And that right there makes me very uncomfortable. So that is the system, and why people are protesting and why people are burning police departments. That has to change. That cannot continue to be.
Right. And we have to start to talk about how our, perpetuation of Black people in the media, how we are perpetuated. And that has a lot to do with how people perceive us. And so as we start to make changes systemically, because from what President Obama said, we are the change we have been waiting for. So as we get into these positions and we take on these jobs, and, we understand that we have not been elevated to our positions just so that we can look good and sign the check, but we've been elevated to these positions to make these systemic changes and make these make people accountable and hold people feet to the fire to say, this will not happen on my watch. So, even when I was in education and I work in an alternative center, I told them, like, these kids deserve a chance at going to college. They are college material. And so I'm not going to hold them back because I don't think that they meet the standard of what college material is. So it's important for us in our respective roles to start to change that narrative and really take that mantle up and make those changes, one policy at a time, one meeting at a time, and just stand up for the bigger cause.
That's interesting.
And the media has to be held accountable. It has to be held accountable. We have to start demanding that these imageries, there's a difference between different movies and everything, but you have people in different parts of the world that's never seen Black people. And so the only images they see is what they see on television. And so even my son, I was talking about, we had a conversation about my son, my 3-year-old, and him.
Is that the one that had on a Spider-Man uniform and his Spider-Man PJs?
Right. And so for him to look at that image, to see himself in that Black Spider-Man, that the light in his eyes, I can't explain that. So imagine the opposite, that a young boy at that age, a 3-year-old, and all he sees is that someone with a gun or violence or perpetuated as somebody that's angry or criminal. It's the same effect.
But see, I think that goes back to the systems that were designed to destroy us. In any military campaign, you must have a powerful propaganda campaign. So the people, whoever these suckers are in Hollywood who control these images of us, they give us coonery, buffoonery, the hot Black mama who just can't control herself. So then let me ask you this question. Should we next start demonstrating and protesting against these Black so-called artists who are participating? See, if I own the company, I have a vested interest of making you look like a buffoon and a fool and an oversexed person. But you also should have some level of responsibility, like Denzel Washington, well, Training Day, but at least not to take those roles. So what responsibility do our Black actors have, and rappers? Let's not leave them out, because Snoop Dogg want to talk about Gayle King, but the reality is he BITCH ified the Black woman in many of his videos and much of his music.
Right.
So now all of a sudden you want to come back and be conscious. Well, you did so much damage for decades to Black women. So what responsibility should we also have to the Black community to hold our rappers accountable, to hold the people who are acting accountable? There's a certain actress, I won't name her name, but in every role she plays, she loud, she ignorant, she ain't even funny, but she playing a funny role. She always running behind other men trying to see who she can sleep with. So what responsibility do our own professionals play in that kind of image?
But it goes back to the fact that we have to change the narrative by being informed and educated, like you said. We have to be accountable for the systemic racism that we have essentially carried on. The practice of of the imagery and taking on roles. Like, we have to really take a stand. And like I said before, not on my watch. And so everybody has to kind of assume their role
All
and say,
hands
what
on
am
deck.
I going to do? What am I going to do different? What am I going to do different? Because I'm done having the conversation about people saying that, you know, it's them, it's them, it's them. A part of it is us. And we have to really be accountable. And what people don't realize, you know, I talk about this within my circle of friends, that, you know, the Jewish dollar exchanges hands 99 times before they leave their community. 99.
Because they got more money?
No, because they understand the power of their dollars.
Right.
You know how many times our money exchange within our community before it leaves?
30 minutes.
One. Right. So we have to, it goes back to planning. It has to be strategic. It has to be systemic.
Like banks?
We have to put a plan in place. And we can't just have these conversations and just saying what we gonna do and just talk out of the side of our neck. We are smarter now. We have resources. We have people that have been elevated to positions to really make a difference. So now everybody has to really take on their mantle and do the work that is going to need to be done in order to move us forward.
Absolutely. So it sounds like, Ms. Saintil, that as it relates to the Black community, nobody's coming for us. The government is not creating a plan for us. We hope we get reparations in some way, but even if we do, it ain't coming the way we think it is. So we got to be our own solution. All hands on deck. The Black man needs to stand up, re-erect himself, resurrect himself, and be who he was destined and designed to become. The same thing with the Black woman, because right now, when I was in Italy and I was watching television, it was my first time being embarrassed to be a Black American, because everything I saw from television was ignorant shows. And I was like, whoa, that's what
they sell. That's what they sell to them.
Yeah, that's when I first began to really, truly understand the power of media and the responsibility that we must have as a people to collectively show who we are in the most favorable light. Is there any last word that you have for the people who are watching and who are still listening?
Just remember that everybody's doing the best that they can. Absolutely. But we can always do more, you know? So just make sure you invest in yourself. Make sure you take time to have conversation with your children. Make sure that you connect with your family. You know, the most important, I think my coin phrase is that we were placed on this planet to coexist with people, not places, not things, not jobs, but people. So your relationships matter. How we treat people matter. How we start in and maintain relationship matters. So people first.
That is awesome. That is awesome. All right. Thank you so very much. I don't know if Brother Jefferson is going to come back, but it has been absolutely a wonderful hour and 18 minutes. So, Brother Jefferson, we're going to say 90 minutes. I know you're thinking, come on, let's get there. So any last thing from you, Brother Noel?
Last words, love your neighbor as you love yourself, and never forget that your life has purpose, your life has worth, your life has value, and never let anyone tell you that it doesn't.
All right. And I want to thank Brother Tavares Johnson, as well as Sister Beate Ewing. I don't know how my music just come on. It's like the theme music started its own self. So, all right, everybody. Thank y'all. Love you. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, Manoushka Saintil. Anytime. Thank you for dropping that knowledge.
All right. Have a good day.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Tavares, have we stopped streaming yet? I think I should end there.
Let me check Facebook to see if it goes crazy.
Democrats and Republicans, people with differences on how we fix the system.
Well, I know that is very Get up.
It looks like it's still on.
Is it? Okay. My music back there is just doing its own thing. This is so interesting. I'm like, okay. Well, listen in. I'm going to log off. Bro, you killed it again, man. Great job. Great job.
Thank you, brother.
And hey, I have that meeting tomorrow they moved it up to 10 a.m. So I'll let you know how it goes.
Let me know. I'm here. I'm here for it.
Peace.
All right.
Appreciate you. All right, love you back.
Love y'all too.
Y'all Tavares, love y'all, man.